Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Maitreyi and I'm very passionate about tabletops and I am learning to be a better GM, a better player, and a better person. And I want to share with you some of the cool stuff that I've been learning. Today I want to talk to you about Popcorn Initiative and why I love it despite its very stupid name. For those of you who don't know what Popcorn Initiative is, it's a variant approach to figuring out the order of combat. So typically when you're figuring out initiative, everyone rolls dice and combat order is kind of based on, highest, lowest results. You might have some modifiers you add to that. Generally, that's how dice-based games operate their initiatives. Certainly systems like D&D or Pathfinder or any of those, like, that's just how you do initiative. The modifiers you add or subtract to it are typically sort of related to your character's abilities. In D&D, your dex modifier, as an example, can affect your initiative. Popcorn Initiative is a variant approach to figuring out combat order. So, first, going to talk about what it is, how you would use it, and then finally, we'll wrap with why you should use this, or why you should give it a try anyway. So, what Popcorn Initiative is the person whose turn in combat it is picks who goes after them. So you as the GM, like you pick who goes first, but then that person picks who goes next. So they kind of go through and they pick anyone who's in the combat order. So that can be a fellow PC, it can be an NPC, bad guy, group of bad guys, group of moogs. There's no rules to determine who goes next. It's just you as the GM decided this PC kicked off the action, so they go first, and now they decide who goes next. If you have a round to get ready, you can figure out who goes first by rolling off like you normally would. But after that first person is decided, there should not be any dice rolls to determine combat order. So, person whose turn it is picks who goes after them, and then that person picks who goes after them, and after they've taken their turn, this goes on until everyone, including NPCs, bad guys who are controlled by the GM, have gone, and when either NPCs or bad guys or anyone that's controlled by the GM goes, the GM decides who goes next. Whoever the last person is in this round is automatically the first person of the next round. Popcorn Initiative doesn't really allow for like multi-turn hold actions or anything like that, because the idea of it is really to try and capture that sort of frantic dynamic tone of like the heat of the moment and the battle. So you go when you're called. You can't hold your turn on past your next turn. You can pass it, but you can't hold it indefinitely. Again, the idea is in the heat of the moment, patience and pondering will get you killed. What you can do though is ready in action, which kind of works the same way as rules is written in most systems, in most games. Basically, you specify the action and the trigger condition, and when the trigger condition comes up, you take your readied action. If you haven't already taken your readied action by the time your turn comes up again, you lose it. You have lost your ability to take a turn. So this is what I mean when I say that like a turn cannot be held, or your action cannot be held over multiple turns. So you can always ready it again if you want, now that your turns come around again, but that is the risk you pay for readying the action instead of going when you were called. Like, you might end up losing your turn if the trigger number comes up. So you can see already that Popcorn Initiative does a few things. One, it allows for players to be strategic about their combat turns when deciding who goes after them. One of my favorite and often used examples of this is if you have a caster cast entangling vines or roots or something like that, whatever it is to kind of root the mooks in place. And then you kind of pass to a blaster who can call lightning on them or something and effectively destroying the whole group of mooks right then. Or you can make sure your heavy hitters go, before the bad guys to do as much damage to them as possible before they've even taken a turn. And they make sure then that the biggest threat is them. So presumably when the bad guy's turn comes around, they're have a face full of barbarian or whatever they do. The second thing it does is, because initiative is basically redone every turn, players can iterate based on changes to the battlefield. If the barbarian went first this time to capitalize on hitting big bad hard and first, and now they're pretty weakened but the mooks are still up, the approach to handling it can be changed on the fly and in the moment. Maybe now you want to pass, instead of your single damage dealer, your single target damage dealer, maybe now you want to pass it to your AoE damage dealer. But either way, you can kind of make that decision sort of game time. You're not beholden to this order of combat. Number 3, players have an edge with this kind of initiative tracking. They do have kind of an advantage, because despite the cinematic nature of the fight, things being back and forth, pass back and forth, there's limited restriction on movement and on flavor. I mean, you should generally not have a lot of restriction on flavor anyway, but specifically for this, there's probably not restriction on flavor. Despite all of those cinematic elements, at its core, it's fairly tactical. So GMs, you can take the gloves off a little and amp up the challenge a little bit. The thing that Popcorn Initiative does not articulate well is how to deal with timed slots for turns. Where you should keep this in mind is if you have things like spell effects that say, last till the end of a turn. Say the caster who casts it at the end of this selection order, he goes immediately next turn. What does that mean? Does that mean that the spell effect ends at his turn? Does it mean the next initiative order round? Because next round is effectively a new initiative, so, But, what if they go after the bad guy? Is it proccing twice? There are lots of variables that can exist. The important thing is to just pick one and go with it for consistency at the start. And then at game time, if you need to make a modification, you need to be comfortable making that modification on the fly. I personally have spell effects last for one extra round despite the combat order of the caster that it went in. So basically, if a spell effect is cast this round, regardless of whether the caster was last or first or whatever, the spell effect is going to last until the next round of initiative order. That's the rule I use. And that kind of prevents me having to make changes on the fly, because it typically, it works fine. It works fine for what I need. Pretty similar to D&D combat, which is part of the reason I do it this way. My players are already kind of familiar with that cadence. So that's the what and the how. And for both of you who have been here before, I like to adopt a what, how, why approach. So let's talk about the why. Why you should use Popcorn Initiative despite its terrible name. Lots of reasons. The main ones involve PC engagement and during combat, which, at least in 5e, is arguably the weakest part of the system, but broadly as well. It kind of elevates the combat from you hit him square in the hit points. I'm paraphrasing my friend Ron Blessing from the Savage and Lose podcast here. Also works to have a little bit more interesting pacing. Lets the party have more complex actions and have that element of teamwork. Things that they probably never really had a chance to do with a standard initiative system. I mean, you can sort of get around it with like help actions and held actions and that kind of thing, but it's not the same. Also, you will find that using this system makes players more attentive to and in combat. Because there's no initiative order for them to zone out on until their turn comes around, and their effectiveness is directly resulted by the other things that are happening in the combat and what other players have done before them. Now, instead of just waiting for their turn, they are watching to see what opportunities are made that can make their turn more effective, in theory. So even when it's not their turn, they're much more engaged with the play that's happening because it impacts their turn. Finally, from a GM perspective, it's so much easier to track, man. Like, it's so much easier to track than writing down and keeping reference of everyone's fucking initiative for the start of combat. I want to talk about a few tips for making this work at your table, should you decide to try it out, and I definitely think you should. It's a lot of fun. It's so much fun, and every time I've tried it with players who are not familiar with it, they love it. So if you're planning to make it like a regular part of your GM bag of tricks, though, there are a few things to keep in mind. Like if this is going to be part of your regular game or anything, few things that you should keep in mind that I want to mention. One, you're going to want to tune down monster difficulty, bad guy difficulty initially, because like this is just kind of unfamiliar to everyone and you don't want to accidentally TPK, just trying something out. I get it. Try to avoid the urge. Because honestly, if you're genuinely seeing your players fast approaching a TPK, you can always adjust on the fly if you need to, as you probably already have done before. But don't start combats easier. Let the PCs figure out their shit with fights on the same level that you would normally have them with the same difficulty you've always had. And then you can tune up or down accordingly in the subsequent weeks, after everyone's kind of got their feet wet. Number 2, related to this, don't play nice and play to win. Like, I know that sounds super contentious, but I promise you it isn't. This is a system that gives a tactical advantage to your players, and so the second you can have a powerful bad guy go twice in a row, let them go fucking twice in a row and just unload. Again, I know this sounds kind of brutal, but it just kind of adds tension and challenge without putting your players in too much real risk. Because if the bad guy has gone twice in a row, effectively what's happened is he's gone at the end of this round, after having taken a bunch of hits, he's going to go at the start of the next round and unload, and then he's going to take a whole bunch of hits again before he gets to go again. All the PCs, or most of them, are going to be able to take a shot at him before their next turn. So in the moment, it has that potential of being like, oh fuck, he's unloading, but they're not in any real danger. Probably. Number 3. Take advantage of the inherent above-the-table conversations that will happen. Okay, I'm going to cast Entangling Vines so that you can call lightning next. And use this kind of thing to sort of encourage characters to pass their turn in character in combat. And be like, Daksha, I've rooted them. Show them your lightning. It's just fun, man. It is still a combat, so don't let them have like massive strategic conversations or anything before their next turn, but they can have like quick little banter in exchange to plan what needs to be done, because that's really the point of this, is to allow them to have more complex tactical actions rooted in teamwork. Number 4, make sure you have mooks. There is nothing as anticlimactic as having a combat with one single bad guy and they're not able to do shit because the whole party just focus fires them and downs them before it's even their turn. If you have more than 2 baddies, you force an initiative order that splits up the PC's turns because they're not going to want all the bad guys to go at once or together or twice in a row. This is a system that relies on the action economy of the number of people you have on the board. So make sure that you utilize that. Number 5, push your players to act. Don't sit there and harangue them, obviously, but when someone's turn comes up, don't let them spend too much time hemming and hawing. If they can't think of something to do, just remind them they can either pass or they can ready an action based on a trigger. Get them used to making decisions quickly in combat. There might be some concerns initially, but honestly, it's just a familiarity thing. It's just teething problems. Once they get used to not being able to strategize ahead of time, they will know their abilities, they'll know what opportunities look like, and they'll be able to engage in a quick, exciting combat really well. Trust your players, they're gonna be awesome. Number 6, your players can hold and pass turns, but your monsters shouldn't. Just go, man. Like, especially with mooks, waiting and holding turns in popcorn initiatives really only exists to give the players a sense of control over their turn. It's not a tool that you should use as the GM. Just fucking go. So yeah, that's popcorn initiative, and the things you should keep in mind if you wanna use it regularly. You should very definitely try it out. It's so much fun, super fun to run, even more fun to play. I haven't really talked about that part, but my experience with popcorn initiative has actually been primarily as a player. I super love it. It's been so much fun. It's a really tactical approach to combat that still feels dramatic and cinematic. Like, that's cool as hell. And it makes combat significantly more interesting. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching. Come and see me again soon. Bye.